Hey everyone, what do you think programming will look like in a few years if GitHub Copilot gets mass adopted? What is Copilot, and can computer programs be made to write computer programs? Watch on and I'll show you. Also, please go down and hit the subscribe button. As you can see, we're at the cusp of 1 million subscribers and you have the power to help us cross that goal. On with the video. It was a normal day when I mysteriously got access to Copilot. I had only dabbled in programming, but this was a game changer. Program that can write programs, state-of-the-art artificial intelligence trained on billions of lines of public code. Why do I have access to this? There's no way this works. For anyone unfamiliar with GitHub Copilot, this is a super powerful piece of modern technology that was introduced by GitHub, which can provide suggestions when coding, or pretty much write entire blocks of code for you. It does this through some pretty powerful artificial intelligence, and this has got a lot of programmers rejoicing because a lot of boilerplate code can now be automated away, while there's also another section of the internet which is freaking out because now people are wondering whether this is going to replace the jobs of programmers. Well, it was going to happen one day. Let's take a look at some examples of Copilot in action and see what exactly it can achieve. I'm on the wait list to get the early release, so these examples are from the group of people that have access to it. I'll put links in the description to the source posts or videos so you can check them out. And I'll pretty much try to critique how good of a tool Copilot is in these videos and give you my thoughts on them. Here's an example of GitHub Copilot writing a Python function where you input 2 dates and it returns the days between those 2 dates. This was instantly auto-suggested. Another example is this one, which I find particularly interesting because it makes use of separate libraries that you have in your file. So it has that understanding of the context of the situation, and then it can construct appropriate queries based on that. So in this case, you're trying to list the name of GitHub repositories for an organization. So that needs to make a request and actually pull that data in from the internet and then present that in a coherent and readable manner. A really interesting application is if you have a function that you have created, you can actually use Copilot to generate unit tests for that function just by writing a comment saying develop a unit test. So in this demo, you're also able to see that this is what's suggested, but you can see other options as well. And something doesn't work, you try the other ones. Sometimes something might be more readable or be more in line with what you're looking for. And the second you find that thing, then you can simply accept it and you're done. On Twitter, there were also some examples of people who had access to this sharing their findings. This one was particularly impressive to me. Essentially, you can build a model to classify images into 3 groups. So that information that in the comment is specified here, and as a result of that, that means that the final layer of your neural network that you've created will output 3 different things. Dataset has 2,000 images. I'm not sure whether that was used to inform, for instance, the depth of the network, but you can clearly see that these are being factored into the creation. For instance, you can see that the input shape is 500 by 500, and that's specified here. This is enough context, apparently, for Copilot to generate an entire network architecture. This was a fun example here. So this is using Copilot to create a function that redirects people to a Rickroll. Also pulls out the exact URL. Did I try that URL? I guess we'll never know. So here's another example that I found really interesting. So a developer named Cassidy who works at Netlify was doing a Twitch stream where they essentially just gave Copilot a bunch of comments and saw whether it could create functions to do those things. So these start off pretty basic, but this was a really interesting one. So it's like a function that returns a joke, and then Copilot says, what happens to a computer program that runs too long? It gets wrecked. Haha. Ha. Maybe Copilot's humor is beyond our understanding. A function that tells us the next lottery numbers, a function that returns if we should have pineapple on our pizza. Copilot said, true. You guys make of that what you will. A function that returns if AI is going to replace us. The return type for that was true. A function that returns the best food in the world. It returned pizza. And then some of the more serious ones, such as a function that inverts a binary tree, and it instantly did that. Function that returns the first n prime numbers was successfully able to do that as well. Function that solves FizzBuzz, very typical programming question. Function that returns the sum of all numbers from 1 to n, that also worked successfully. This is pretty impressive. A function that does merge sort, and it just, yeah, that's merge sort. That's impressive because I literally spent a whole semester learning sorting algorithms. So it's kind of crazy to think that you could literally get the answers to those things just by writing a comment. And finally, there was a blog post by a guy named Rahul. He built a tic-tac-toe game with it by literally just specifying build a tic-tac-toe game, and like that's it. That's all that was required, and you have an entire, probably, what is that, like 50 lines of code, more than that, 64 lines of code just produced for you. Another one, get the price for cryptocurrencies. So it was able to successfully identify which API to use, and then created a query to that API based on an input that the user could give, and it would return the price of the cryptocurrency. So these are all demonstrations of what Copilot is capable of achieving, and I think they're all super interesting and fascinating examples of this technology being applied. Not surprisingly, this isn't the first time that people have attempted to create programs that can write other programs. Most notably, in 2017, researchers at Microsoft attempted this in a paper that I believe is titled Deep Coder: Learning to Write Programs. So they used a combination of machine learning and search algorithms in order to create a program that can generate novel code. And this was pretty impressive. However, the approach they used had several limitations. So firstly, the programs they could synthesize were really basic ones to solve simple programming competition questions. And even these, if you had more complex problems which required more complex algorithms like dynamic programming or search, their solution pretty much wasn't able to handle these cases. So why exactly is GitHub Copilot set to be better? Well, OpenAI is supporting this project, and Copilot is using a new technology called Codex, which is a derivative of OpenAI's GPT-3 language prediction model. So if you haven't heard of it, GPT-3 is a really powerful natural language processing machine learning model. Wow, that was a handful. GPT-3 is a really powerful machine learning architecture that was trained on pretty much large chunks of the internet. And now it can do text prediction really well, which makes it great at a ton of things like human-sounding writing, conversations, and many other things with natural language. Anyways, I think GPT-3 has been sufficiently explained on the internet, so I'm gonna skip that explanation right now. If you're really interested, I'll link a 2-minute papers explanation, which I think does a really good job to go through the architecture. Now then, the real question: will Copilot replace programmers? So there's a ton of videos and articles hyping this up right now, but in all honesty, nah. I don't think Copilot in its primitive form can do that right now. Although the technology is certainly impressive, there are many demonstrations of GitHub Copilot making mistakes, introducing subtle bugs, being unable to do things well, or maybe program certain functionality at all. So programmers will probably be around for quite some time. That being said, there's still the broader philosophical question that we can answer, and that is it still possible for us to create a program that can create or write another program? And I think that Copilot is a demonstration that this is possible in some capacity, and I don't think it's far-fetched to see greater strides in this direction of this goal. There are a lot of benefits that can come with this, most definitely in having greater code output or just being quicker and more efficient with producing code. But I'd be more interested in seeing this technology applied towards artificial general intelligence problems. So this could mean improving or creating better virtual or robotic agents. This could mean these agents don't just identify things in their environment and then passively react to them with the code that we as programmers have endowed them, but instead they can literally alter their source code or add on to it at the very least in order to conduct new activities, much like how humans pick up new skills. Now that's an interesting application of novel code generation. Some other things to consider is whether Copilot makes it easier to skip learning the foundations of programming languages as a result of its powerful suggestion and autocomplete features. I was thinking about this, and for a moment I turned into like a purist, or those back in my days people who think that getting good at programming is only possible through the painful struggle of writing everything yourself and debugging for hours and hours and hours. However, I don't actually think this is the case anymore for two reasons. Firstly, with the advent of calculators, graphing calculators, and software like Wolfram Alpha, yes, students can skip the learning process when doing math, but it has been my experience that more often than not, this is used to supplement and not really replace their learning. In fact, usually it just gives you more insight, especially when you see some new method that was used in order to solve the problem that inspires or encourages you to look more into that. So I think it's really a matter of perspective there. Secondly, I actually saw a person working at GitHub give a demonstration of how Copilot could potentially be used to help learn programming. And this was the thing that really convinced me. Essentially, you can type a comment like print hello world in whatever language you want to learn, or store a variable called name. or show me a function that reverses the letter of name, and so on and so forth. Now, Copilot will show you how to write that code, and then you can use an extension or plugin to hover over that code and read the documentation of that language. So this is a very quick way of seeing how to write code in a particular language, as well as understand what functions, methods, or features of the language are actually being used in order to write that code. You can use this as a quick feedback loop in order to actually learn the language, and I think that's incredible. So given the right mindset, this can become a super valuable learning tool to rapidly pick up programming languages. In the end, I think this is a great piece of software that will hopefully be very beneficial to the programming community at large. Also, I hope the devs working on this develop a method to distinguish between good code, bad code, and spaghetti code, which Copilot outputs. But overall, this seems like a big step towards actually creating programs that can write programs, which is super exciting. If you enjoyed this video, please drop a like. Feel free to talk to me in the comments and tell me what your thoughts are on Copilot, or whether you think it's actually possible to create programs that can write programs, and subscribe for more videos.